Hello and welcome to Take Six. I am not Julie Broughton. I am streaming executive producer Thomas Mates. Julie is once again off. She was filling in over the weekend for Michelle Morgan, and so she is getting her just time off. And so, sorry. So now you're stuck with me and my stammering, stuttering ways. Today we're talking about the tropics. It is on everyone's mind, not necessarily because there's any cause for great concern, but because there is something out there that we are paying attention to and that you should be paying attention to as well. This is all covered in a fantastic article by our own Jonathan Kegas. Now, if you go to clickorlando.com right now, you'll see on the homepage Tropics Watch, everything to know about the tropical disturbance in the Atlantic. This is a very well-detailed article from our own Jonathan Kegas. Jonathan is a huge weather nerd, and he is the person you want to be listening to in just these occasions. It details a lot of specifics about this tropical disturbance that we're keeping an eye on and at what paths it might take and how that could impact Central Florida. Again, this is not necessarily something that we are concerned about just yet, but definitely something to be paying attention to and something to be watching, especially as we're moving into the more intense part of this tropical season. Again, if you go to clickorlando.com, it's right there on the homepage. Now, Jonathan is not here, but we have one better for you. We have Central Florida's only rock and roll meteorologist, Samara Cokinos, joining us today. Samara.
Wow, never had an introduction like that before. Thank you so much.
Oh, no problem. It is so true. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. It's Thursday. Tuesday. It's my Thursday. Forgive me. I work weekends, so it's
okay.
My Thursday.
You can be forgiven for sure. So, okay, Samara, like I said, we are keeping a close eye on this wave disturbance. Right. What do you want to call it right now out in the Atlantic?
We're still calling it a tropical wave.
Tropical wave.
Mm-hmm. So what's happening is right now it's battling some drier air. So that's good because dry air is not good for storm systems, right? So it doesn't help it form better. But the thing is, as it moves into the warmer waters of the southwestern Atlantic over the next couple of days, that's where things are going to change. So the warmer water will be more conducive for some development. So we will be watching this as we head into the weekend. Late week, we could possibly see a tropical depression develop over the Greater Antilles or the Bahamas. So for now, this is something to watch. This is, one of those things where we see models differ quite a bit still. So it's not a for sure thing yet. It hasn't even developed. So that's what I like to remind people about is it hasn't developed yet. And until it does, until it actually is a system to track, really there's different scenarios that can happen. And even after it develops, there are changing scenarios. And that's why we have to closely monitor all these changes. But for now, the National Hurricane Center has given it a 60% chance of taking on some development, more tropical-like development over the next 7 days. So,
and that's up a little bit from just yesterday, correct?
Yes, just yesterday and over the weekend. It was 40% over the weekend, 50% yesterday, and now it's up to 60%. So we are seeing that improvement in terms of the percentages going up and also the water temperatures that, slightly less dry air in place. So all of those things are going to be contributing factors when we talk about, is this system going to actually develop or is it just going to kind of be a surge of tropical moisture? So,
yeah,
and again,
it has a lot of hurdles to contend with between now and whenever it might do whatever it does.
Right. And even then we wouldn't see a lot of this moisture arrive until next week.
Week. Yeah. Got it. Okay. So right now it's way out there. That orange blob on the screen, that's just denoting where it might be developing, correct?
Correct. So based on models, so we have the GFS going to the West Coast or the Gulf Coast rather, and the Euro models and other models have been trending a little bit to the East Coast. So they're all going to differ until they start to get, again, until we get something that actually develops. They're going to continue to run with their each individual data and just kind of one of those things where we have to watch the environmental conditions around it. So
and the hurricane hunters haven't even gone out there yet to look at it, correct?
No, not yet. So, and the thing is, we don't want to scare you with this, but this is just a really good reminder that, August is a time where we see an uptick in tropical activity, right? Especially getting into September. September 10th is a peak of our hurricane season. So when we think about that, getting up to that peak, we're going to start to see a rise in the activity, and we're already anticipating this to be an active season. So, you know, go ahead and just kind of finalize a lot of your plans. I mean, it's imperative that you are prepared at the beginning of each season, because it only takes one storm to make it an active season for you. And being prepared is the best thing that you can do to keep you, your family, or your friends, or your property safe. So, the big thing about being prepared
Yeah.
ahead of
So
time.
so this isn't, like we said, this isn't necessarily something to be concerned about, although, it could impact our weather in some way, shape, or form.
Correct.
Though what we're really saying is that this is the opening salvo, the reminder that, like, oh, these things are coming, and
Hmm.
you need to be ready.
Right, exactly. The July 4th holiday is over. A lot of people have been, already experiencing flooding because of our day-to-day thunderstorms. And if you think about, hurricanes and what that brings with it, I mean, we saw in Ian
Mhm.
20 inches of rain in some areas. I remember seeing video of, the apartments over by UCF flooded out. Lots of flooding. There were people in Geneva
Mhm.
that didn't weren't able to go back to their homes for 60 days.
Yeah.
Can you
And
imagine that?
no, and that's an area that's just, we know, is prone to it. Like you said, just with our day to day rain, it could see that
Right.
some ponding, some flooding of some nature,
Mhm.
and so now
Yeah.
we're expecting something that could bring, could at least be a rainmaker for us, and we could see a good, dumping on us.
Right.
Yes.
So, with being prepared, you want to have your hurricane kit in place, right? You want to have
Mhm.
those supplies put together. We have all of that information for you on clickorlando.com/hurricane, right, Thomas?
Correct.
Is that
Yes.
right? All right, nailed it. Rock on. So, but some other items that you may not be thinking about are, insurance. You're like, oh, well, I have
Hmm.
homeowners insurance, right? But do you have flood insurance?
Yeah, you were just talking with someone from FEMA today about that, correct?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So flood insurance is separate from your homeowner's insurance, and, it's not something that you can purchase last minute that goes into place immediately. I learned that it takes 30 days for that policy to become effective. So
Yeah.
if there's something on the way, getting flood insurance in the event that you're like, "Oh my goodness, this is gonna be a big one," or something like that, or,
Hmm.
if you're waiting during Ian and you're like, "Oh, this looks like it's gonna be pretty bad, I might wanna add flood insurance because, it could bring a lot of rain," right? It's already too late for you to do that.
Yeah.
So, flood insurance is definitely one of those things that you want to have already in place before
Hmm.
we start to see this activity. I mean, with our day-to-day thunderstorms, we saw flood advisories over the weekend, flood warnings even.
Hmm.
Osceola County, Volusia County, Orange County, Seminole County. So when we get those downpours with tropical moisture, I mean, that could lead to localized flooding. And yes, it could possibly flood your house if it's, day after day after day, or slow moving or training storms that we see. So, knowing your risk is something that you need to really hone in on, to protect your property. And I was talking with Tony Hake at FEMA, and he told me a lot more. And I mean, some really, really good information, even for people who rent. If you're saying, I don't have a home, I rent, I don't have to worry about it. You do. You do.
Hmm.
You should worry about it.
Yes.
You may not have to worry about the home, but what about the contents inside the home?
Exactly.
You know?
It's why you need renter's insurance as well, and
Right.
like, to your point, you said, we might not see anything from this disturbance, or wave rather, until next week. It may or may not get a name. We just certainly don't know yet, and we won't know until we get those hurricane hunters out there really tracking it. But by the time the thing has a name, and essentially when it's going to hit, it's already too late. And that's the thing we want to stress,
Correct.
is that if you haven't already gotten it, the best time was 30 days ago. The second best
We're
time is
still
right
getting it.
now. Yeah.
We still
Exactly.
want you to get it. We're not trying to deter you from not getting it, okay? We're all we're
Exactly.
saying is if you're planning on it being, active for you within a 30-day period of time, it's not going to happen. It's going to be out. It's going to be 30 days before your policy is active. So that's just something that I was just like, that's some really good information to know.
Absolutely.
I don't. You would think it was kind of like car insurance, where your policy is effective immediately
Hmm.
once you register your vehicle with the insurance. It's not like that. Home insurance and flood insurance are different, are a breed of their own, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Absolutely.
So.
So, as you're checking your go bag and making sure that you have your water, your
Mhm.
food and everything else you might need for hurricane season, again, not necessarily for this system, but for
Right.
anything that might come, now's the time
Mhm.
to check on that flood insurance, even if you're potentially not in a flood zone, but I know with your conversation you had talks about all sorts of ways that you can check to see where your house is, whether it's in a flood zone or not, and
Right. Mhm. Tools
what
you
your
can use.
tools you can use,
It's amazing.
costs.
Yes, costs. Costs were a big one. They made some adjustments to rates.
Hmm.
That one was a big one for a lot of people. I mean, you talk about cost, and I mean, the cost of groceries right now is just, atrocious. So
Hmm.
when everyone is budgeting as much as they can, to think about having to purchase another policy just to
Hmm.
protect yourself, I can tell you that, yeah, it is going to be a cost. But if you think about the damages that could come with a flooding event, okay, um, those benefits that you'll have from that policy are going to outweigh the cost,
Absolutely.
because you could lose so much. I mean, you remember that, Thomas, when we saw those students from UCF who basically lost everything in their apartment? Mind you, they're students in college.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
they're already, just
Hmm.
trying to get through school, maybe working a job if they
Hmm.
if they have time, or maybe working two jobs just to make ends meet, to make their rent. Of course, they don't wanna have to spend that extra money, but when
Hmm.
you look at post Ian and you saw everything that they lost in retrospect, it's like,
Yeah.
was it worth that 18, or I'm just throwing a number out there. Was it
Hmm.
worth that extra $18 a month? Can you truly afford it,
Yeah.
And I get it, everybody is strapped. We're all having
Hmm.
to budget super tight, but I don't wanna have to come out of pocket $20,000
Yeah.
for damages and flooding.
Absolutely. And so, just so we can kind of tease ahead a little bit here, you had much more of your conversation is going to be airing today at 4:30, and we're going to get a little more in depth on all these subjects that we just touched on briefly. There's a lot more information out there that you need to know about, before the need
Helpful.
arises. Yeah.
Super, super helpful.
So while we're, keeping an eye to the tropics, of course, we've got our weather today that we need to focus on, and for the next 7 days, can you give us a little bit of rundown on that, because you're significantly
Um
more qualified than I to do so?
Well, let me tell you, we're getting closer to summer part 2, as I
Hmm.
like to call it. That's when, we're just steady in the heat, but we're going to crank up the heat a little bit this week. I know you just loved it when I said that, right?
Oh boy.
95 and 96 for the remainder of the week, okay? But your rain chances tomorrow are going to be slightly less than they are today. Today, scattered showers and thunderstorms mainly in the second half of the day west of I-95. Unfortunately, I know the coastline needs a little bit more rain, especially if you're in Brevard County, but not saying that you won't get any rain, but your rain chances are closer to like 30% compared to 50% across the interior. Wednesday, a little bit less, but then we crank it back up as we head into the weekend between 50 and 60%. That's typical. That's a typical pattern for us here in Central Florida this time of year. But when we talk about the heat, it's going to be disrespectful. The heat index between 105 and 110 degrees. Okay, so we
Oh.
could be looking at heat advisories in parts of Central Florida later this week. So that's what I mean when I talk about it being disrespectful at that point, because you just step outside. I don't know if this has happened to you. It probably has, Thomas, but I got out of my car after a shower here, like not like a rain shower.
Hmm.
I was in the parking lot and I got out of my car and the sun had just come out.
Yeah.
It's like stepping into pure steam. I
Yeah.
mean, you
Just
just
like a wet sock, that's
it's
just come out of the dryer.
that's it. It just takes your breath away. And I mean, I grew up here. And I
Hmm.
mean, people are like, well, if you don't like it, I do love the heat. Don't get me
Hmm.
wrong, but that steaminess is something else, and it takes your breath away. And
Yeah.
I should be more used to it, considering I am a Florida native. But every year, it might be my age. I don't know, 29.
I mean, I've been here since 2018, so a little bit more than 6 years. I am northern blooded, and I have never acclimated. Not even once, not even a little bit. I will never walk outside and be like, oh, it's not too bad today. No, it's like just instant.
Well, the
Just
funny thing was, I think I remember telling you, oh, wait till September.
I know, right? September's when it's supposed to start cooling down. That's when the fall leaves
Nope.
move in. That's what I'm used to.
Nope. We like to say, hey, listen, the humidity starts to exit around December. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
October, November, I make that joke a lot. I hope people understand it's just a joke, but
I
that's
mean,
what it
I've
gets hot.
I've
It's
had a
hot on Christmas sometimes.
95-degree Christmas before. Yeah.
Exactly. That's when you decorate a palm tree.
Oh. Nothing says Christmas like, a single candy cane sticking out of the ground next to a
Listen,
palm tree.
it's fantastic. That's the way I grew up. I don't know any
Yeah,
different.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Samara. I really
Thank
appreciate it.
you.
You have
I'll
a
see you
great
guys at
day.
4:30.
Yep. We will see you then, and hopefully we will see all of you as well. Thank you so much for joining us today on Take 6. We really appreciate you giving us the time of day, and we hope to see you again starting at 4. And of course, you'll see Samara's piece talking with FEMA at 4:30. Thank you, and have a pleasant day.